Hi everyone, it's Oliver Harper here, and I'm back for a new commentary with Rob Hill, the Bad Movie Bible, and this time it's on RoboCop 2. Not a popular film at the time with the critics, but I think it's got a lot better over time. So Rob, are you looking forward to talking about Robo 2?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a fan of this movie. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. At the time when I was a kid, a lot of my friends didn't like it that much, and the IMDb rating is like 5.8 out of 10. So it seems to be, not maybe down to the tone, which we'll go into, or just down to it's not doing much new. I suppose that people don't particularly like it, but the critics were savage at the time. Roger Ebert, and Gene Siskel was so offended by it. Which is I always like, when critics get offended by movies, I always find quite amusing. So everyone, you can enjoy this podcast by itself, but you can sync it with your own copy of the film on Blu-ray or NTSC DVD. So put the timestamp to 0 and press play now. What's interesting about RoboCop 2 is that there isn't any title sequence for this one.
I noticed that, yeah.
Yeah, even as a kid when I saw it, I thought, has this been chopped out or something? Because the first one has RoboCop comes towards the screen, number 3 has the title, and it's only at the end it has it. Not even in the RoboCop font either, which is very strange. But like the first one, it opens with a commercial, Magnavolt, which is a wonderful sort of small role with John Glover.
And this might be one of the reasons the film kind of struggled a bit with reactions, is because it really, if we're honest, the best scene is probably the first scene. It doesn't really get any better than this, but that's no bad thing because this is magnificent.
It's the best sort of, satirical commercial in the film, where the first one has quite a few which all really work. I mean, John Glover, best. Oh, at the same time, did Gremlins 2, which had a larger role, didn't he?
Yeah, it pretty much exactly the same role as Daniel Clamp, but he's also in there's a fairly obscure action movie called God, what is it? Automaton or something like this. It's an Olivia Gruner action movie in which John Glover plays the president of a security company in the near future, and he actually does these fake adverts. There's a couple of them throughout the movie, and it's exactly the same. It's John Glover selling some kind of security technology that doesn't really work properly and is kind of crazy, and he does it exactly the same way. And again, it's the best bit of that movie.
We saw there with Ed 209, sort of his leg through the sewer hole, and he's got like in the background is Phil Tippett having a little cameo.
Yeah, it's the famous Phil Tippett cameo, isn't it?
I love the nuke now. Also, a new addictive drug. It comes in his little eye drop, holders as it were, and inside a cassette tape. It looks like they're delivered in.
Recycling, yeah, it's a contact lens case, isn't it? That they just filled with coloured liquid, and then this is brilliant. All this stuff's brilliant. It's just so over the top and stupid, isn't it?
You've always got to start with Media Break, haven't you?
Yeah,
RoboCop. That's it has to be done. This scene here with Tom Noonan, who ended up being disappointed with the movie, didn't like the script. This was supposed to be a big thing, wasn't he? Doing this massive speech to his followers, and that what we're seeing is him sitting in front of a brick wall. So obviously clearly downscaling the movie, these sort of scenes. But even though it had double the budget of the first one.
it's kind of legitimate though, because I think that original concept for that scene is, yeah, he's in front of all of his followers, and they kind of downplayed, I think, in the end, the whole him being a cult leader aspect, as well as him being a drug gang kingpin and so on. But it kind of makes sense.
It sort of dilutes some of the satirical sort of nature of his character, where it was supposed to be a comment on what were those cult leaders of the 1980s.
Mm.
But obviously, it's kind of now he's just got a small following, and they're just drug dealers, really. But this, I mean, obviously with Frank Miller writing it down to the writer's strike, so they sort of got him involved. I think John Davison, the producer of the first one on this and this one, had I think wanted Alan Moore, but he said no way, and then they went with Frank Miller because of his The Dark Knight Returns, and he would end up writing this very quickly and had to do a lot of rewrites throughout. And the characters we see here, I think Paul M. Salmon said, who worked on the film and worked on a bunch of movies for Orion and Conan the Barbarian and so forth. He said this was kind of Frank's characters from Sin City, that we saw the archetypes of them,
Exactly. I mean, it's not a huge surprise to learn that Frank Miller wrote these characters, is it? I mean, this is we're currently watching two hookers kicking the shit out of a guy who's just stolen something from a bag lady. This is as pure Frank Miller as it gets. But before he got involved, they did bring back the original writers Ed Newmeyer and Michael Miner, didn't they? It was there because Orion. I think everyone probably knows Orion was in a lot of financial strife at the time of RoboCop, and it was their big payday. So they were desperate to get a sequel into theatres as quickly as possible, and just basically bribed or blagged Ed Newmeyer and Mike Miner into writing another screenplay, although they didn't really want to. But then circumstances, I think, contrived. Basically, there was a writer's strike, wasn't there? I think more than that, as far as I can tell, the original writers just didn't want to carry on. They just didn't. They weren't interested, so they were looking for a way out and basically walked, using the writers' strike as an excuse. And that's how Frank Miller got involved, because he wasn't a member of the Writers Guild, so he was free to work.
No, because obviously before Paul Verhoeven and the writers kind of bowed out, they had Tim Hunter on board to another script, and that script has sort of a bigger connection between RoboCop and Lewis. This was kind of relationship starting to build, and she had far more screen time. And I think due to creative differences, Tim Hunter had kind of left, and then they brought in Irvin Kershner, obviously famous for Empire Strikes Back, obviously Never Say Never Again, and he was a kind of a old school legend in Hollywood, really done a lot of great movies, but people only remember him really for Empire Strikes Back and possibly this. He'd had like such a short amount of time to prep the movie, and he managed to. I think if you think about the sort of production of this, and if you read into it, it's amazing, and they got to finish it, and to a really quite high level. It's just that they're down to the problem with with many movies we've seen which had script problems, are they're changing scenes on set, and there's photos of Frank Miller just sitting there rewriting stuff.
Yeah,
and that's always going to be a problem. It's never going to be.
And especially but I think reading between the lines, I'm not sure that Irvin Kershner really grasped the material as well. It's got the sense of one of those movies that's been made by a pro in a hurry, but the subtleties don't all quite marry up. There's some tonal problems, and so it's like he's a pro. He came in, he got it done, but I'm not sure he really understood the deeper meaning of the movie.
Now this bit coming up though is the best introduction of RoboCop, when his foot stamps out of the car and the music kicks in. And we'll talk about the music in a bit, but this is my favourite sequence in the movie. It's the build-up. And the music kicks in. Boom! That's so good. I swear there's a bit of a focus issue with this bit. The focus puller wasn't really paying attention, because he's a little bit out of focus when it cuts to the long shot of Robo. This aspect's in perfectly focused. When he shoots at him, it's a bit out of focus.
It's completely out of focus. Yeah, the car's in focus, but he isn't.
Yeah, so when he walks, there's one shot, it's slightly out of focus. Unprofessional, man.
What do you think about the suit design here compared to the first one?
I mean, I understand where they kind of changed the color, because he's upgraded. It's like a new model. It's like a new car, right? He looks like a car. Like the design of it, it's like the color design. I think it looks really good. I think it's very sort of a very sleek, modern. It's like a modern product. I think people are a bit annoyed. He kind of looks more blue now, but I think the use of colors with the purples on it makes it look a little bit more dynamic, actually. I never really had an issue with it. I never really complained. But it's interesting why kind of number 3 they went back to the look of the first one.
Yeah. That's the only positive move they did make in the third one. I prefer the look of the first one, but the problem is it's so it's sort of so intertwined with the lighting scheme and the unusual lighting of that first film. Almost TV-like, universal lighting. I mean, there's no this looks kind of cool, doesn't it? The neon,
it's very slick.
Shadows. And
Mark Irwin, who did The Fly and The Blob remake, he's unfortunately he ends up doing loads of comedies, so I think it's kind of a waste of his talents, really.
That's out of focus too, isn't it?
Yeah, slightly out, yeah. It's night shoots, mate. Someone hasn't put their eye drops in.
Yeah, and it needed more light. Clearly, needed more light.
Weirdly, this film makes use of a lot of crew members for the bad
Yes.
guys. So there's no obviously none of them really have any dialogue because you paid them. You know, if they'd had dialogue, they become an actor. You've got to pay them more. So these are all kind of guys who probably Sparkies or whatever. All worked in the grips and so forth, lighting, just playing these kind of henchmen.
I love that bit.
Yeah. This bit here as well is brilliant. Just walk in casually, comes up behind him and just locks them in.
Yes. And then later on, when Lewis turns up, the first thing she does is, I always think, like, well, why are you unlocking that? It's clearly a room full of problems. What's the point of unlocking it straight away before your backup team's there?
Also, because when we said at the end of the commentary for the first one, he became Murphy at the end, and they got rid of the sort of effect on his voice. It sounded more natural once he removed his helmet. But this one, he's kind of gone back to being product again. He's RoboCop again. He's got the quips he has as well. The little lines he has are quite humorous. So it's kind of still being comical. With what he says. This is a bust. And silly things later on he says. They're kind of little short lines that are just not really a human aspect of him. He sounds very much like he's a machine at this point still.
Yeah, I think that's one of the concepts they kind of got lost somewhere a little bit, really. The whole the existential aspect of who RoboCop is, where's the line between man and machine and all that. But I mean, how do you revisit that? It's a classic case of like you're kind of stuck making a sequel to RoboCop. You can't win. You've either got to change it completely, or which I think is what Verhoeven wanted to do, isn't it? I think he was not interested in just doing another RoboCop v Crime story.
Well, the idea of the original script was that RoboCop had been damaged and he found himself basically kind of all basically fucked up and down in a basement, covered over, and someone had found him 20 years later or something like that, and powered him up again and restored him. And this new AI it was running Delta City, or maybe just Detroit at that point. And Robo sort of falls in love with this AI.
Yeah.
The idea of Robocop falling in love is always just a bit like, where are you going to go with this? It always makes it a little bit problematic. And even with the other script with him getting close to Anne Lewis, also it's just kind of weird. I mean, Anne Lewis could probably do better not fall in love with a cyborg without all the bits you need. And
As far as we know,
well, yeah, something just kind of the front bit kind of pops down and something comes out. Sex machine. It's like,
if Beta can perform, then surely RoboCop can.
But I think the concepts and the kind of what ideas are in that original script were funneled into the RoboCop TV show pilot, the pilot movie.
Yeah.
So that's the Corporate Wars, So that's kind of, there's an AI in that, and he has a connection to it, but there isn't this kind of, I don't think there's any kind of romance to that, from what I remember from that only one season they did, because it was too expensive to make, and everyone hated it, because it was like aimed at kids. And talking about kids, we have, this at the time, this kid just shooting people and swearing a lot and talking like an adult, and critics, and especially Roger Ebert, hated this kind of writing for this character because they felt it was so kind of offensive and bad taste. But I think people seem to forget that other kids were evil, like Damien, and
there is a
Village of the Damned and things like that.
I've read that defense of this character in a couple of places. Yeah, that there is a long and storied history of cynical children, villainous children in movies, but this is different, and I hate to agree with Roger Ebert because I never agree with Roger Ebert, generally just on principle. But it is morally speaking, it is an absolute disgrace of a character when you think about it, because he's only there to create a link for children at the end of the day, to give children an identifiable character, and for him to be so utterly, evil and unpleasant, it's really quite a questionable tactic when you think about it.
I think that's the scene we just had there where the Robocop bounces the bullet. I mean, that's a very cool little technique there they did. But yeah, well, this kind of falls in line with what I felt. I've commented before, maybe other retrospectives I'd done on other movies from 1990. So Predator 2, Die Hard 2, RoboCop 2, all kind of have this kind of very overtly kind of aggressive tone
Yeah,
to their movies,
yeah.
and they seem like they don't care. It's like we're going full on 18 rated. We know we can pump loads of money into it. This is a time when you could have successful 18 rated movies with big budgets, and they didn't really care about what the critics or but maybe thought about holding back. But they're kind of very kind of mean and aggressive in their tone. And they weirdly all 1990 movies. I
Yeah.
don't know what was going on in '89 where everyone's like, fuck this, fuck that. Everyone's just really annoyed, and this made once they put the movies out in 1990, everyone sort of reacted in a very sort of shocked way with the tone.
It's interesting, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. It's maybe it's something to do with it being just the tail end of that period, as you say, where movies could be R-rated or 18s or whatever and still be commercially successful, because we're right at the turning point here, really, aren't we? In the early 90s, when that stopped being the case, when they stopped making movies like that, when Arnold movies stopped being 18s and R-rated and so on. So maybe we were kind of, if not, I don't know if you want to be saved. I kind of like that nihilistic tone because they are, and because they're all kind of nihilistic movies at the end of the day. Like, it always shocks me when I rewatch Die Hard 2 and they crash that plane. They actually kill hundreds of innocent people, and you really don't get a moment of sympathy for them. They're just kind of numbers,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
they're gone.
yeah. It really is. Yeah, it's just a full-on killing spree, that movie.
It's pure nihilism. But yeah, that changed, didn't it? It stopped selling.
Mm. This sequence here is, I suppose, it's the moment to wrap up RoboCop 1. To
Yeah,
sort of get rid of the baggage they had with the connection to his wife and child. And it's a very good scene. It's very well directed and performed. Where they're just like, just Robocop's stalking his wife, who believes he's dead, and obviously, yeah, led to believe now that he's still alive. And when he speaks to her, and he's just like, they made this to remember him, or something like that. Um, the makeup here is superb, though. It's still creepy as hell, but so fascinating. I
yeah.
think the blend is even better. I don't know, maybe it's down to the lighting on this, and it looks very, very real.
I know what you mean. It's tempting to say it's even better, that especially
Mm.
that the point at which flesh and metal meet. It's tempting to say it's even better than the first one, but it's filmed a lot more sympathetically here.
Mm. Yeah, because he has to accept this legal bullshit, and he's just holding it back. And then when he goes to speak to her, he's like, he has to put on this, uh, you know, uh, put on what the company
A brave
wants.
face,
Yeah, a brave face. There we go. Yeah.
which is what he's doing. It's interesting as well. I'm convinced there's something you can almost see the metal endoskeleton underneath the flesh in
Mm.
in these shots, which you don't really get a sense of in the first one. I'm not sure if you're meant to, but it almost looks like Peter Weller's face is kind of slightly distorted.
I think the makeup's highlighted more of his angular features. You know what I mean? His sort of the bone structure.
The jaw and yeah.
Interestingly, the lady there who works for OCP, one who supervises RoboCop. She didn't want to be credited in the film.
Yeah, I know. Do you know the story behind that?
No, all Paul M. Salmon said was that she either had a relationship with someone, or she maybe didn't want to be associated with the film. I'm not sure. So
I've got a theory, and I did
okay.
some research because when I heard Paul Salmon say that in his commentary, which is well worth checking out. Actually, it's a spirited commentary. He's an interesting chap. But so yeah, he makes a throwaway comment about how she's not credited, that actress. And if you look online, there's a bunch of people talking about, why wasn't she credited? What's the deal? What's the deal? The theory is certainly that she had an affair with someone on set. And although they were potentially free to have that affair, she wasn't. She was married. And there are rumors that that person was Peter Weller. And if you know anything about Peter Weller, you know that he's a professional grade shagger, as we'd say in this country, if we were 30 years older than we are. He's famous for it. Is every set
He's
he's ever been on. There's a line of women just come and go from his in his trailer. So and there's a picture of them together where they look a little bit too friendly, and her husband. Well, there's some story about her husband being some vague connection to this movie as well. So I think basically she had an affair with someone. That seems probable, and my guess would be that it was Mr. Weller. He's great. He talks about it in RoboDoc as well, doesn't he? He's kind of proud of it.
All this attention playing a machine. This is where the sort of the tone, or the sort of maybe the sort of structure of the movie is kind of a little bit uneven. I suppose it's you've got these emotional moments here that sort of it's a slight focus issue there.
Focus, yeah.
Yeah. Where it's trying to do something quite different, and the emotional angle of everything, and it sort of just gets lost in the mix. And as I was saying earlier, it's just this kind of, this bit here is a sort of, just get past any leftover bits of RoboCop 1.
Yeah.
So they can move forward with something different now.
I can't remember. Do we see him much without his mask on for the rest of the movie? I want to say that.
Yeah, we do.
We do. Do we? Oh, okay.
But it's only kind of it becomes the double, which is all ripped apart, which has always creeped me out as a kid.
Yeah, that's when lying on the pavement outside the police. That's freaky as hell.
Yeah.
There's some really rough stuff in this movie, frankly,
Mm.
as there is in the first one. But
it's because the first one was so extreme, and then they cut it back and it became quite harsh. This does. I mean, the bit when Officer Duffy gets cut up is, the blade cuts his stomach in half. That's, you only see it briefly, but it's still really quite hard to watch because you can hear him screaming and so forth. And
it's the juxtaposition makes it more powerful as well. So they're more not offensive, but more effective, I guess, because RoboCop, the first RoboCop, has such an even, coherent tone. Like, it's satirical and there's humor in it, but it's somehow it's of the same hue to the excess and the violence. Whereas in this, they will just cut from some silly joke to something brutally unpleasant happening, and that tonal shift can be really quite jarring.
the mayor himself, I always thought was brilliant as a kid, because he was just like having someone in place to be mayor who's got the foulest mouth.
But he's a good example of the jarring tonal shift there, because he's a full-on comedy character at the end of the day. As a kid I liked him, but I don't like him now.
You don't like him now?
No, I really don't think that he fits now. He doesn't. He's too over the top.
No, he's very over the top. That's why I always kind of liked him. But he has those moments of, like, he's there for the people, but he just has the shortest fuse. But Dan O'Hillery, he gets a larger role in this, and he's far more the bad guy than the first one.
Absolutely.
The first one, he felt like he was just the head of the company, who had a very clear vision on things, and he, could tolerate certain things, but he was kind of more a sympathetic character. With this one, he is, I don't know, a bit more Rupert Murdoch. I don't know, maybe.
Well, he's more proactive. Paul Verhoeven always said that he saw him as a proper villain in the original film, because he's ultimately he's the one pulling the strings. He's the one who's, contrived to create this situation with the local government, and had this appalling idea for a hybrid human warrior for the street. But yeah, we don't actually see him do anything that's problematic, so we're fine. Whereas in this, he's
so we make our own assumptions, don't we?
Yeah, and also there are some, it's easy to just, Dick Jones is kind of hoovers up all of the flack in that company anyway. But yeah, in this, he's much more proactively villainous.
Yeah, and he loves. You can clear. It's clear he's really enjoying this
Just
part.
Marvelous, isn't he? He's absolutely marvelous. I said too soon that we started on the best scene in the movie, didn't I? With that Magnavolt commercial. This is the best scene in the movie.
The first robot, stop while I'll shoot. Just like shoots everyone. But he holds his arm. He's like, he can still feel it. But it's still really horrific, though. Like, it's got this human head inside. It screams, and he just like.
The one coming up when he removes his own mask. Yeah, that's the stuff of night. It's this one, I think, isn't it? It's the stuff of nightmares.
Yep.
He's got his arm in a sling now, that guy.
Oh, it's awful. But those robots do return in the recent RoboCop game, so it's
Oh, do
quite cool.
they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They sort of the new head of OCP wants to basically get rid of the police and used to use robots, and he uses those ones to sort of control the crime, but they're crap.
Everyone always points out how these two are in lockstep with their hands in the same position. But if you notice, she is always around them as well. She's always very consciously, very deliberately doing something different with her hands. They're behind her back, for example, here.
Yep. Now she's in Murder She Wrote.
She is in Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
You always have to bring this up, Ollie. You seem to be obsessed with Murder, She Wrote.
I barely ever seen it, mate. You're the one who's obsessed with it.
No, she's in a couple of episodes actually. She's a villain, a really similar character actually, in an episode where a peg-legged man is found dead in Jessica's living room. It's quite an emotional episode. There's quite a lot of up and down.
Oh my god! I thought she's going to make an evil version of the main character as a robot.
That would be worth seeing.
I love how basically he just lets her do what she wants because she'll sleep with him. you know. But she kind of retired from acting like 96, I think. So,
Well, once you've been in Murder, She Wrote, there's nowhere left to go. Same with Dana Hurley, actually. He didn't do much after his Murder, She Wrote experience. This is two Murder, She Wrote alumni speaking to each other in a RoboCop movie. This is as good as it gets for me.
I love how obviously we saw earlier with Venture 09 kind of fumbling at the beginning, and he makes an appearance again in number 3. But it's kind of interesting that OCP still kind of utilise him, even though he's rubbish.
Yeah.
Or it's rubbish. It's not really a human.
They had to bring him back because he was so popular, I guess.
Yes, yeah, yeah, of course. And the police station, yeah, obviously it's down in Houston, isn't it? It's no longer, what's the original one again?
Dallas.
Dallas, yeah, sorry. So we're not seeing the original OCP type building anymore, and obviously the police station is very different. I don't mind the new police station. It stacks a bit of, the production design's a little bit bare bones, really. It just seems a bit. It seems larger in scale, but it just seems a bit generic. It feels like a school, really. They're filming in. Like a school that's going to be left to rot.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, even if they hadn't moved location, the first one was shot in Dallas, but basically they blew up so much of Dallas and upset so many people that they couldn't get a permit to shoot there for the sequel, so they went to Houston. The thing is, it's one of my pet peeves in sequels is production designers' habits of completely redesigning established sets for no particularly good reason, just because it's a different production designer now, so they want to stamp their own print on it. And so I think that would probably have changed anyway. But if you just used a different, I don't know whether he's like the desk sergeant or what he is, the guy whose name I can never remember.
Sergeant Reed.
Yes. If they hadn't had him in there, then you'd just think, oh well, it's a different precinct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But they wanted to bring him back because he was popular, so there he is.
Because anyone's sort of continue all three are the sergeant, Anne Lewis, and the other gentleman who.
Felton, what's it?
Yeah, Felton Perry.
Felton Perry,
Donald Johnson, who is in all three of them, and his wife, obviously. RoboCop's wife. Yeah. She has a little cameo in the third one. Only for that sort of weird morphing effect they do, but. This is all apparently a shopping mall. It's weird, isn't it? It doesn't look like a shopping mall.
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
So it's kind of the streets as well. Like you see this kind of weird, punk design, graffiti. It feels like they're in the video game Streets of Rage or something. Or maybe it's kind of like it seems kind of set in a similar world of Streets of Fire from the mid-80s, that Walter Hill movie. Even it's got a bit of a vibe of The Warriors, you know what I mean? With this kind of dilapidated kind of like, streets and so forth.
It's only just struck me, but there's also a vague air of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as in the movie. This kind of hyper-real neon punk rundown city, and obviously the fact that there's a child sort of central to the criminal endeavors.
And you got arcades there, which were all kind of part of Shredder's kind of appeal to the kids and stuff, was to entice them with arcades, beers, and cigars and skate ramps.
This could be straight out of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Isn't this a school day? Sort of. I literally, that's my thought. I think about when I'm in town when it's too busy on a Wednesday. I'm like, why are the kids all out? Isn't this a school day? And it's apparently half term. I was like, oh, for God's sake.
Didn't have half terms in my day.
We see a lot of arcades here by Data East, which put out the arcade version of RoboCop. So obviously, I'm not sure if the game cameos in this, but there's quite a few classic games in there. You see, oh, kid with an MC Hammer here. I love the gun he's got though. It folds. Was it supposed to be like a ghetto blaster that sort of, or like a boombox opens up into a gun?
Yeah, I'd never noticed this in the original. I keep reading about it, but I'd never noticed that the gun sort of comes out of whatever, that the gun is disguised as whatever it is he's carrying. But yeah, apparently it was meant to be a boombox. Doesn't work very well, whatever it is. It always makes me laugh that those kids in there are throwing popcorn at RoboCop and drinking Pepsis and so. They look about like 17. Or a bunch of 17-year-old gang members aren't going to be drinking Pepsi and eating popcorn at the end of the day.
Oh, I've got some good titles there. Two Crude Dudes. We had Real Ghostbusters Arcade. We had Sly Spy. That's some good ones there. Officer Duffy.
Duffy.
It's when he throws him. It's good. He looks a bit like Brett Ratner, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
Weller really. I know Peter Weller complains about it now, saying that it was a load of crap, but he does look like he's having fun because he's kind of out there, Peter Weller, isn't he? He's not.
He's very eccentric.
He's not one of your button-down actors. He's got some personality.
He's a very intelligent man, and the eccentric people are generally often very intelligent. So
this is all a bit. I don't know.
Well, this is also, again, as well, a kid trying to strangle a woman and so forth. And I don't know, it's all kind of fits with the sort of, did we need to have a young kid doing all this? But I don't know, maybe it's just them showing, the influence Kane has, over the years.
Yeah. It's ultimately, it's there for kids watching it to go. I mean, I'm not going to go full Roger Ebert and say films shouldn't do this. But I think it's worth highlighting that they are doing it.
Yeah.
And that kid there beating up the policewoman, that scene was for all the kids watching it to get a thrill out of, to cheer on. He's literally there as an aspirational figure, this complete monster of a child. But I'm all for it. Just don't pretend you're not doing that.
So what do you think about the music change for RoboCop 2? I know everyone loves the original theme, but Leonard Rosenman, who'd done the score to Star Trek 4, I believe didn't like Basil's work, but he'd, provided new music, and Irvin Kushner, had a choice of composer, and he went with Leonard. And do you miss the theme of the original one?
I do. But I mean, I don't know. I've got nothing against going in a completely different direction, but to me, the music's nowhere near as good as Basil Polidoris's score from the first movie, and missing that theme is, I don't know, it is a shame, but fine.
There's little moments of it where, obviously, it was a bit earlier on when he steps out of the car for his introduction. It's a wonderful piece of music, and when the Robo's driving to this kind of this, I'd say, abandoned factory, really good music there. But obviously Leonard kind of does reuse musical cues from other movies, a bit like James Horner, we copy and paste stuff. So it's a little bit Star Trek 4 in this, and I think during the end titles, when you can hear this choir singing RoboCop, it's a bit weird, but I don't know. It kind of, even though it's different, it still evokes the same kind of theme, but it's like a B-side to it. You know what I mean? It's like a creative license with it to sort of make it sound like RoboCop, but it's not, to sort of not pay anyone. But the case is when they do sequels and the composer comes on and changes the theme, the composer can earn more money. But if you can earn less if they has to reuse themes because that music has to be paid for, original composer. But it just again messes up continuity with things. So yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it? I read that they wanted Basil Polidoris back originally, but there wasn't enough time because I mean, everything about this film is kind of defined by the time frame that Orion insisted it was all done in.
They wanted 2 films, didn't they? They didn't want just one. They wanted 2.
And that's why Frank Miller was on board and ready to go because he'd already been signed up to write the 3rd one. And then when they lost the original writers, they just moved him to the 2nd. Now, I've always wanted to know how much of the plot to RoboCop 2 was originally going to be the plot to RoboCop 3, or whether he had a clean sheet of paper.
Well, the rehab team in the 3rd one, they were part of what I remember, were part of this film.
Oh, it went round.
So the OCP had used the rehab team to sort of go in and wipe and take out the poor people, essentially, the rebels. So it was a large script that was kind of basically split into 2. It's a bit like the sort of Superman thing, Superman 1 and 2 was one movie and they split it in 2. So yeah, so that's kind of, well, it was originally a massive thing for Superman, they cut in half. But RoboCop 2 and 3 are kind of the one piece of the story, and it just cut in half, and then things were kind of changed and moved around. And obviously we had, as mentioned earlier, with Frank Miller kind of rewriting stuff, so things would change a lot. They did bring out Frank Miller's RoboCop original script as a comic book in 2006. So that's probably worth hunting down at some point if you see it going cheap. But I think these sort of things don't get reprinted that much, these kind of books. So you may have to pay quite a bit if you find it cheap. You'll be quite lucky. So Tom Noonan, sorry, he'd best known for Manhunter, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
And his cameo in Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
But he said he obviously didn't like the script, but he enjoyed working with the director, Irvin Kershner, who also kind of admitted he didn't like the script either. But Tom said he developed this twitch, during the making of the film, that he's in his mind, his body he wasn't happy with his performance, and he kind of bowed out of acting on film for a short while. And
he had to go and write a play to recover from RoboCop 2.
That's the antidote, a play. I need a play.
But he's another one, like Peter Weller. He's another guy who's kind of out there, isn't he? He's not.
He is, yeah.
I think they're both kind of frustrated hippies in a way. And
yes. But Tom, again, he's just brilliant interviews, even though he doesn't do them that much. But he's a fascinating person.
Yeah.
But he has chosen some odd roles over the years. I think, why did he do that? It's like Peter Weller. He's done some weird, crappy B movies. Why has Peter done that?
Well, they both. Every time you see him interviewed, it's as if I wouldn't be surprised to learn they'd just done a massive bong hit just before going on camera. Every one of them. Oh, sorry, both of them. In every interview I've seen of them, they're just a bit out there.
Now, my first viewing of this film, because in the case of Aliens, my older sister Emma and my dad would rent movies, and also he'd probably rent it for Emma because maybe a little bit younger to get an 18 at the time. But they rented this film. So this is where my dad would actually watch these kind of movies and kind of enjoy them. But now he's like, I'm not watching that, Oliver. It's beneath him now. But at the time, back in 1991, he watched this, and I remember sneaking in as a 9-year-old, probably maybe 8-year-old, and just seeing. All I had my memory of it was just seeing RoboCop walking around this place, and Dad's like, "Get out! You can't watch this." And it wasn't until kind of maybe a couple of years later where my friend managed to acquire the RoboCop 1 and 2 double feature VHS, like a 4-hour VHS with RoboCop 1 and 2 on it. And this bit always, I always found to be unpleasant. This bit, just when they quite early into the film, really, they're pulling him apart, and he's left in a terrible state. And again, it's an amazing animatronic by Rob Bottin and his team. This is kind of the point, isn't it? With the last of the analog optical effects movies.
There's a lot of stop motion and stuff in this, isn't there? And it's a hell of a lot of stop motion. I wonder if
it's the best stop motion, I think, of the movies for a long time. I mean, obviously you had with Aardman and the claymation sort of stuff, and Phil Tippett did something recently, didn't he? The stop motion movie, which I've not seen yet. It's supposed to be incredible
Yeah,
to look
I've
at.
not seen it either, actually. Yeah, keep
Yeah,
forgetting
just
about
maybe
that.
it's some sort of distribution thing where it's not easy to watch. Maybe I don't know, but this, I think, this Total Recall. What other movies around this time? Big special effects movies like 1990 to like 92, or the last of the
Yeah, I'm trying
analog
to
stuff,
think
which
now.
was really just the best it could get. I think really.
Because they were getting a lot more ambitious. There's a lot, like I say, there's a lot more stop motion in this than there is, comparable movies of their time, and it's because they'd got so good at it, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the, I think the making of the movie where hunting for other stop motion artists, and they're all desperate to work with Rob. No, Phil Tippett. Sorry, to all work with Phil Tippett because they all love Phil Tippett for his work on Empire Strikes Back and
Yeah.
ILM. So he had the cream of the crop, the best guys to sort of help him with this short schedule, this really crazy elaborate stuff they do with Kane. Or RoboCop 2. I love these little graphics here. It's like a video game, system damage and things like that.
I think they were made by Paul Salmon, weren't they? That that's one of his claims to fame. So Paul Salmon is, I think he was just like the publicist or something, technically on this, but he's kind of become the sage, the oracle of RoboCop 2 because he's a really good interview subject and he loves talking about it and he was on set doing all kinds of interesting things.
Hmm.
Part of that was all the blinking lights and so on you see in the background and all the really basic bits of computer animation. He'd ended up saying like, why don't you bung me a few dollars and I'll get a small team together and we'll knock this out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he is funny. He loves is him who does the commentary, isn't it, on the official release? And
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's yeah he's endlessly amusing. Within 20 minutes, he's made a bad joke about doing bad acid and outed her as a as a harlot who's had an affair.
But he'd also, as he said in the commentary, he's best known for Future Noir, the Blade Runner making of, which I purchased years ago. It's a fantastic book. I think he's done one on Conan. I think maybe,
Oh, I see.
which is really good, worth seeking out. He's written about 30 books, so he's a walking encyclopedia, isn't he, of film knowledge? And he's always got a little bit of a, he's a talking machine, as one of my friends said. He was talk and talk and talk.
And he's not afraid to big up his contributions as well, which I always find amusing and
We had his
worthwhile.
cameo there, didn't he? He had his cameo in that scene in the background.
And we keep missing as well. I don't know if it's cameos or if it's just a small role for him for Mark Rolston from I think probably best known for Aliens. He's a
Yes, and Rush Hour he's in. Yeah, he's obviously playing one of the cops who are picketing outside, isn't he? They're all on strike. Um, he's in funny man. Oh god, yeah, I never liked this bit. Even as it's not that graphic. You just see a bit of blood on his stomach, but it's the thought of something being cut in.
and again it's tonal. It's like he's wheeled in there making jokes. There's a small child present because he wants to see the gratuitous violence. And I don't know, there's something really sort of tone deaf about everything.
Mm.
I don't like. I remember that medical implement from childhood because I must have been, God, I can't remember how old I was when I saw this, but like you, probably about, must have been, no, I must have been 13 actually.
You're a bit older than me, so
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm a bit older than you, and I saw it when it came out when it came out on VHS, I should say.
Not a pirate copy this time.
No, no, sadly not.
So that guy there, the doctor or whatever, the surgeon, he looks very familiar. I've seen him before. I mean, he looks like a relation of Tom Noonan.
He does, doesn't he?
I think did she sadly pass away? Kane's like assistant.
Yeah, she has a bigger role in this than I remembered. It's a few years since I've seen this until recently.
Yeah.
I think there's a flash of humanity from the boy there, having to look away, and it's Kane who's forcing him to watch rather than him choosing to.
Yeah, she passed away in 2020
Hmm.
at the age of 54. Yeah, I thought I remembered that. 'Cause I remember seeing something on social media. I think it may have been like the RoboCop archives forum, which is hive of RoboCop fandom. But yeah, she had cancer, sadly.
Mm.
So obviously the photos there you see, because when it cuts to the shot with them both on frame, like from a side angle, you can see all the photos. You see director Irvin Kershner, John Davison. You can see Paul and Salmon. So
There's
there's
Kirsch.
Kirsch.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember that guy now.
that's Paul Salmon with the mustache and grey hair.
Look at that other guy though, the grip guy, I think it was, or lighting guy, the
Jesus
craziest
Christ,
beard.
they all look like killers.
They do. It's like, I think as soon as someone is given those mug shots, side profile, everyone just looks like a criminal straight away, even like the most normal person.
Yeah, especially people from the 80s and early 90s. They all, yeah.
All got shady haircuts and just like crappy clothes. It's like Crime Stoppers. Have you seen this man?
She's really good. I like her a lot. Belinda Bauer, is it?
Yeah, Belinda Bauer, yeah.
She's a really good actress. It's brilliant as well.
This is kind of the weird Japanese influence, isn't
Yeah,
it?
this is very Die Hard, isn't it? Yeah, it points to the same thing, the huge influence of Japanese sort of mega corporations that
Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? The talk at the time was this kind of threat of the Japanese kind of taking over, and because they were just sort of beating America in terms of technology and in producing really good products and cars and so forth, and everyone was relying on them, but they saw this kind of threat to them, and it was. I think the comment at the time would like I think Black Rain would also kind of use that as a
yeah,
sort of
very much so.
as part of its story. And obviously this we obviously it's part of the original script where in the third one the Japanese company would take over, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, which leads to the flying robot samurai business. And yeah.
RoboCop lying on his ass for most of the film.
Yeah, because there's a samurai suit in the background there. I'm not quite sure conceptually what this is meant to represent, because it was in Die Hard, the point is that Japanese companies are buying up American companies and American skyscrapers and so on and so on and so on. But OCP obviously isn't, well, presumably at this point, there's no reference to it having any Japanese connection. So I guess it's just like a vaguely sinister thing that was around at the time, that these sort of really cynical mega corporations have a Japanese influence. Has that always been there? That
Well, that's the first time you see like out of his bicep comes a system emergency thing. you know?
it's freaky as hell. That
Yeah, it's like when you see Arnold's kind of double head in Total Recall. It's very at this point now getting very good, weren't they? To sort of
that is more realistic though than I think than anything in Total Recall. I have to check myself to think have they achieved that with animatronics, or is that actually Peter Weller's face somehow?
because we know RoboCop well, what is sort of implied that the skin is over a robotic kind of cyborg face. So it glitching
Yeah,
would naturally do that, right?
makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what gives it that sort of sense of realism.
But every now and again, the face finds itself in a position where it's not doing something weird and not pulling a funny expression. It's actually just a human expression, and it instantly looks completely real to me.
I'm sure that kind of must have, shocked some of the critics at the time. How do they do this? It just looks too graphic.
Maybe that's what upset Ebert. And
I love how she's done this trying to get feedback on what RoboCop should do now. His new commands essentially. I love the ones that what was it? The guy, is it Peter Coran who hid in messages saying avoid Orion meetings?
yes, yeah, there's one saying,
And
yeah.
and they caught it out, and they said they had to approve everything next time for the third one. Anything on screen, the on screen text they had to approve.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because obviously they couldn't take a joke, could they?
They're listed online, all the ones that are visible, and I read them all. And yeah, the two that stood out were avoid Orion meetings and don't walk across a ballroom floor swinging your arms. I like that one.
Here we go. Here's some of the commands you see pop up. Just all kind of optical stuff. Even like the sort of scan line things are still on optical.
I love as well. Paul M. Salmon says during his commentary that Peter Weller has the most beautiful mouth he's ever seen. Something- that is deeply threatening somehow. That's the sort of thing a hillbilly says when he's caught you in the woods.
But playing RoboCop, it's all about the lips, isn't it?
It
You've got to have a
is.
good jawline and good lips.
He's right.
Big ass
He's
lips.
definitely right.
You couldn't have thin lips. I always thought, because people talked about, like, oh, if they're doing a RoboCop film, we'll do a sequel. Who should play RoboCop? I mean, now you can probably do Peter Weller again and just de-age him, and just because all you need is this bit. And if you take the fake mask off, you can still kind of crop on his face, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if they have a new actor, I always thought Paul Bettany would be a good RoboCop because he looks a bit like Peter Weller.
You're right. He'd be very good actually because he's got a great jawline and yeah, he's got the build for it.
Yeah.
And he can act too. He's if anything, he's kind of a specialist at acting kind of monotone, one-dimensional character with makeup. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I always thought the casting dream choice that never happened is Nick Nolte as Judge Dredd.
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte was born to play Judge Dredd in my mind.
Oh, because of his jaw.
Just everything about his gruff, his voice, and everything about his whole persona is just perfect. But yeah, definitely his jaw and face and so on.
Shows like Gary Busey. That would have been good.
But it is interesting to see how much Peter Weller brings to it, not only because of the disaster that is the RoboCop character in the third film, but there's a public service announcement that was filmed. Was a few public service announcements filmed during the filming of this. The famous shot of RoboCop shooting at the shooting at the guy who's smoking by making halo bullets.
That was played in cinemas. That clip.
Yeah,
Thank you for not smoking.
But they also filmed using the body double, the stuntman who's in this quite a bit. A PSA that's on YouTube, like RoboCop going to a school, and it's an actual school. It's not all actors, and it's just dreadful. The guy just, I don't know. He has there's no energy to him. He does this really weird robotic voice, which RoboCop doesn't have. Like talking like I am a robot, and this is how I'd. And yeah, without Peter Weller in the role, it just doesn't work.
It's a beautiful morning. Doesn't the moon look lovely today? It's still daytime. She's like, I love Anne Lewis's hair. It's very mumsy. It's very sort of mum's hair that period. But she was because it's interesting with Nancy Ann because she loved working on the film because she got to work with people she worked with before. She loved working with Peter, but she did not get on with Irvin Kershner. We didn't like her.
Well, you can see why he completely took her out of the movie.
Yeah. I think she had said that his vision of the woman to play Lois wasn't her or something like that.
No, in other words, he wanted a sex bomb type. I think anyway. I've always took that to mean.
But she was one, wasn't she? Nancy Allen in the early 80s. She was Brian De Palma's movies and things like that. She was,
I suppose, yeah. But I mean,
she was known for playing those sort of kind of somewhat slutty kind of women, during that period,
But kind of, I suppose, kind of like bad girls.
Yeah.
Maybe more than anything. But there was controversy in the first film. Wasn't there? There was a question, very much like Gillian Anderson being cast in The X-Files. It was, do we go with the really good actor, or do we go with this alternative one who's not quite as good but is actually a bit sexier? What do we do? And the cutting her hair short was controversial as well, wasn't it? Because that obviously de-sexed her, according to observers.
I do like that moment there where she's like, "Wake up, will you?" And he's like, "Good morning." He's like...
This whole RoboCop persona is, again, it doesn't really work in a lot of ways, but I do find it funny.
And it's, as you say, with Peter Weller's delivery of the lines, here's a perfect example because I'm having trouble. It's like Rowan Atkinson saying Bob or saying certain words which give it that
Bob.
comedic
right.
feel.
And the body language as well, because he really uses his body brilliantly. Somehow he does this upper body rotation from the hips when he's playing this silly RoboCop.
He's even better in this than the first one with his movements. He's got it down to a T, hasn't he? because he's doing different things that sort of that shows you more of his kind of skill at doing this. And we saw earlier on with the kids smashing all the TVs, they were playing Roger Corman movies. I think
Again, the body language here, the pose he's adopted for this interrogation. The suit is a lot easier, apparently, isn't it? This time out, Rob Bottin's suit is a lot easier to move in and put on.
To put on, it's a lot easier, a lot quicker. But I think because Rob Bottin didn't want any rubber this time, so it's all kind of plastic fiberglass stuff, right? So, but it's actually made it more difficult for Peter to walk.
Oh, really?
Because it didn't have the rubber to it, so it's just a solid piece.
Okay.
So you get a lot of things rubbing against each other, I think. And they wanted to keep the plates on with magnets, even in really strong magnets, they'll still pop off.
Yeah.
So everything had to be essentially screwed into it, still.
Because I think it's 100% fiberglass this time, isn't it? Rather than a mixture.
I think it's always they learn, don't they? From it's like with Tim Burton's Batman, where the suit for Batman Returns was a lot easier to put on, and less heavier, and kind of gave more flexibility for Michael Keaton. But Keaton's barely in the suit in Batman Returns. I think one of the makeup guys said he's only in the full suit for like 10% of the movie. Everything else is doubles.
Red Dwarf's the ultimate example of that, isn't it? Every season, if you hear Robert Llewellyn being interviewed, every single season it got easier to put the Crichton suit on, and down from 8 hours to 1 or whatever.
Oh, Robbie's going to come and spoil their fun.
This is just such an incongruous image, isn't it?
This is kind of what RoboCop would do in the TV show, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's a serious plot point where this is like taking the piss,
He always looks like he's delivering a Shakespeare soliloquy whenever he has something to communicate as this silly RoboCop.
He's clearly having the best fun playing RoboCop and is doing the silly stuff. I think most actors would probably have a similar view on that. If they got, it just shows you that Peter Weller can do comedy as well. He can be silly.
Well, Buckaroo Banzai proves that.
Oh yeah, that film. I still don't know what that film's about. The amount of requests I've had to people asking me to review that film, which is nice and all, but I watched it 3 times. I just can't get on with it. Can't get on with it. I think it's a brilliant concept, but so badly executed.
Yeah, here all the directors that have screwed.
Don't
with
run
his
through
systems.
puddles. That's good.
Yeah, in case it splashes people or vehicles. I think that one said. Yeah, they could have made more of that character. I think actually because she's kind of the only. Getting her and Lewis teamed up to do something good together would have been interesting. The scientist woman there who runs RoboCop.
Well, he's the assistant, the Asian guy. He's in Rush Hour playing that sort of diplomat.
I don't remember Rush Hour, to be honest.
His daughter's stolen, whatever. When he pulled the thing out, it's like all his headpiece was all split disjointed. It's like, Oh, here we go. We got Drake there from Aliens.
Yeah, he's always featured, isn't he? They make a point of showing him whenever they pass through that picket line of cops. Which, by the way, what's going on there? So presumably there's another strike going on. I've never really grasped that. It's like we had a strike in the first one, so we've got to have one here. We're just not going to really talk about it.
Yeah, and obviously the other cops don't really have an issue with it because some are still working and some aren't. It's it's not really explained much, is it? It's just kind of a background subplot, that isn't really thought out.
And there's a few of those actually, because there's the whole thing with the city going bankrupt and the mayor basically selling it to OCP. That I don't remember that really having any kind of conclusion.
Well, he tries to raise his own money, doesn't he? To keep Detroit, you know what I mean?
What happens though? Where does that end?
The little kid decides to take over, doesn't he? And that's why they've got all that money and gold they're going to funnel into supporting the mayor, but so they can keep up their drug dealing.
But once that all gets blown apart, is there any kind of conclusion? Is there a solution to that problem? Like, because as things stand, that the city is still bankrupt, and
Yes, and that continues on to RoboCop 3. And then that's what forms the rebels, to Bertha. Bertha. I always just think of that cartoon from the 80s. That machine. Bertha.
Oh, God,
lovely
yeah.
Bertha. Yeah, that's all continued on, but isn't really, directed particularly well by Fred Dekker, which is a shame, because I like Fred Dekker.
I can't remember much about RoboCop 3, to be honest, except that when I was a teenager, it was always my go-to worst movie I've ever seen, RoboCop 3.
Wow. Okay. That's well, I don't blame you for that. When you haven't seen enough movies, RoboCop 3 may be the top of the list, or potentially Batman and Robin for me.
Yeah, the same kind of reasoning, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were both before the Phantom Menace, I suppose.
Oh, Frank Miller's his cameo, but when he takes it though, and he's like twitching, and he goes, I can't remember the line, but he just goes 5 mil per, and he just spits in his face.
But he looks so normal here as well. That's not what Frank Miller looks like in my mind.
He looks like a ghost now.
Looks like John Lennon.
He does, doesn't he? I mean, as Frank Miller, I don't know, there's a documentary coming out soon about him, and I don't know. I always thought Frank was a bit younger, but he looks very old now. I don't know if he's been unwell, but yeah, just kind of made me like slightly concerned. Yeah, he's 67, but he doesn't look 67. He looks a lot older than that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some just aged quicker than others, but
John Carpenter looks at least 130, and he can't be quite that old.
no. Well, Frank's a recovering alcoholic, so alcohol will age you, mate.
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
Rob's actually 25.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got some good RoboCop moments coming up now, where he kind of shows off what he can do, shooting behind him without looking, and shoots the guy, he's about to sniper him. That's a good shot. Like the eye just goes...
And speaking of alcoholism, this is a brewery, isn't it? This is a beer brewery.
Look at this. Oh,
brilliant.
Oh, I love all this stuff. I love seeing, and that's the thing with RoboCop sequel, right? Because even though we knew, like the first one wrapped it up so nicely, like it's difficult to make a sequel. But what they give you just give you more of what you want. Is RoboCop shooting people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of it can only go so far, but it's it's a short hit of new Robo stuff. That's what you want.
So it's a bit like that early scene with the baby, which we should have made more of a fuss about, actually, because that is a marvelous moment, the ricochet shot that kills the guy holding the baby. But yeah, both these scenes feel like that they're just an imitation of the drug factory one from RoboCop to me.
For sure. But now we're seeing the police actually get involved this time, instead of just RoboCop doing everything by himself. It's seeing this now. Yes. RoboCop back to normal. No, yes, good shot in it. Back to normal, and now working with the police to take out the bad guys. I know you never saw that in the first one, So it was always Anne Lewis would help, but she'd still get like completely fucked up as well, They should have made a transformer, shouldn't they, of a boombox that turns into a gun.
That's someone missed a trick there. I bet they have, actually.
Well, Megatron, doesn't he? He turns into a gun.
Well, yeah, I suppose between Soundwave and Megatron, if you mash them up, which must have happened in some episode at some point, or some comic or something.
Oh, the guy's reaction though when he sees the bomb, he's just like fuck. He just like runs, and just, as soon as he jumps out of the truck, boom. The purple, look at the purple look. That's
Yeah,
like the colour from Aliens. If you watch the original cut of Aliens, it all had the purples and blues. Now it's all teal.
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in this. Maybe taking the lead from the suit, from RoboCop's suit, a lot of sort of blues and purples that have a metallic edge to them, other than on RoboCop's suit.
Yeah, yeah.
I suppose it's inevitably a film with as original a lighting design as RoboCop. The sequel is going to have to respond to that lighting design somehow. So maybe they made a point of going, getting a lot more color in there.
I think that was Ed Newmeyer who said RoboCop should never ride a bike or fly. In the sequels, he rides a bike and flies. Maybe it's kind of reaction after seeing those films and complaining he shouldn't. But
I'd argue he probably shouldn't be nailed to the front of a truck either. But yeah, riding a bike is definitely not on the cards for RoboCop. That was a real building, wasn't it? That they just drove through. Then apparently they actually did drive a truck through a building.
that's mad. That's a good stunt work there.
Yeah, yeah. The guy, I forget his name, but the Peter Weller stuntman got a lot of work in this. Apparently, it's him in the suit a lot of the time.
Well, yeah. If you're not seeing the face, it's always or requires much movement. Then it's not going to be Peter, isn't it? So that's a comedy. That's a comedy gag as well. Look at all it right over his groin. He flies off. Oh, great stuff. Oh well, if you look now, like the RoboCop visor is thicker, like it's a bigger piece, so you can see now he's on a motorbike. So when it cuts to Peter, look at that. Look at these shots here, where it's a stuntman clearly. The black piece of the visor is wider in height, and he's obviously looks like he's standing up.
I know, well, he used to. Even as a kid, I was confused by that. Why? Because every time I watch it, I think, oh, right, it makes sense. RoboCop can't sit down on the bike, so he has to stand up. Like, we've all done that with our toy, trying to fit a figure that doesn't go on a toy bike. They have to kind of stand up. But then he just suddenly sits down on it.
So also this part here would be like Peter Weller on a platform on a bike, isn't it? It's being dragged by a car, or vehicle. And he's sitting down.
What was Tom Noonan's hope? What was Kane hoping was going to happen there? I've never understood the game of chicken with RoboCop, because you're not going to win, are you?
No, it seems they didn't know really what to do with Kane in this today, outside of having another RoboCop.
Yeah, this is one of the many problems with that child, is that he hoovers up a whole lot of scenes and lines that Kane should have had, and as a result, in a way, I think we're entering the point now where RoboCop isn't going to be in it for quite a while, and Lewis isn't going to be in it for she's not in half the movie. The main bad guy, frankly, doesn't crop up until 20 minutes in at least, and then really disappears from the movie once he's put inside the RoboCop 2 thing.
Oh, it's the lady playing in the commercial for Sunblock. She's from Austin Powers.
Oh, is she? Who's she in Austin Powers?
Miss Lot of Vagina.
Ah.
Yeah. Come again. Allow myself to introduce myself. Such a good line.
I've just rewatched those, actually, those Austin Powers movies. They are fun.
Oh, God, yeah.
There's some cringing these days as well, to be honest.
Number 2 I don't particularly love, but number 3, that's the good stuff in it, when he gets Mini-Me in a pillowcase and swings him around that room.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, dear.
I loved it. My favourite scene in all of them is in that second one, though, with the silhouettes in the tent. It's completely fucking stupid, but
that is good, yeah. But the third one's good as well, because it's like he's like giving birth.
Yes.
Yeah. The guy reacting. Which I think the guy reacting is the same guy who's in the first one, who gives him his personal effects.
Oh, I think that was,
Michael Myers' a friend.
No, Michael Myers, it has to be.
Yeah. What? She's an adult. Why should she take any advice from like a 12-year-old? You'd be like, shut up, you're going back to school. Right, let's go. I'm taking all this money. I'm going to spend it all.
this criminal organization is the second tier of it really the bad guy's girlfriend and a random child? Is there no other adult responsible? Or
Yeah, any sort of I think maybe they've all been killed off there, haven't they? Well, they've got a couple still around, but there's kind of they've got new other thugs, I think, with them. They must have like
you'd think
hired
there'd be, I mean, there
goons.
must be hundreds of them throughout the city who weren't there and that. But then it's never been the point of RoboCop, has it really? Coherent villains, even in the first one, the whole idea that this guy is running old Detroit, the criminal gang boss, robbing banks and all that, but he's free to just wander about.
Yeah, yeah. He's not afraid of the authorities and sort of gets away with it. I mean, this is also quite harsh as well when she pulls his air supply. You see him go, and you can see all the sort of bits of his neck sort of suck in, trying to get air. His lungs.
Forget actually, why? What was the thinking behind using a criminal mastermind? I can't remember now.
Well, obviously we know that her colleague disapproved because it was you're taking criminals, right? But
Yeah,
I think
because it's a
maybe
stupid idea. So yeah,
yeah, I think it's all part of her sort of because she's a psychiatrist or something like that, wasn't it?
yeah.
Well, so it's maybe sort of her sort of she's experimenting. That's all she's doing to see if her theories work. That if you because he's under control of drug abuse, that you could control him to do what you want, but as long as you supply him what he needs, his addiction, And that's it's a horrible moment. She's just like she's just watching gleefully, that is all part of her experiment. She's just again, she's fallen into this kind of psychiatrist who's become this sort of mad scientist.
There's not. It is a nihilistic movie, isn't it? In that there aren't a lot of upright, morally responsible people to relate to. It's basically a deranged cyborg RoboCop and Lewis. They're about the only characters in this who aren't just complete scum.
Yeah, yeah. This bit's always like, oh, it's just the sounds, and when they pull off the top of the skull, pop, it pops off, and then you can see in the background because they put it out of focus. You can see they've got his whole skull missing the top piece, and they're kind of looking at it and observing. It's just, yeah, it's pretty out there. The crunching sounds. Oh, I'm sure this was cut down a little bit. I would say for the MPAA.
Yeah, my notes at this point it just says disgusting.
It's kind of weird in a way because I suppose when you watch this as a teenager, like, oh, it's so gross and cool. How they doing this? But I think when you get older, you become a little bit like, did they? I don't think you need to see that. I don't know. But it's I mean, it's the creativity of seeing this kind of seeing the brain and the eyes and the spinal cord in this kind of big glass containment thing. It's just
Yeah,
it's
that's
mad horror sci-fi.
yeah, it's quite. I don't know why, but things like this do get to me a little bit.
Mm.
It's like strange enough. It's like that scene in the is it Hannibal? One of the when eating, yeah, you know
And
the
is
bit I
Andy
mean.
Garcia? Is it
No, Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta?
Ray
Sorry, yeah.
Liotta's, but yeah, like eating bits of his eat well, carefully removing and frying, and then eating bits of his brain whilst he's still alive.
Oh, that's not out of focus. It's all in focus. You can see the skull oh,
It's brilliant.
and he's
It's
still
brilliant.
alive. Oh, guy like smelling his own farts.
Yeah, we need this bit.
Well, he does the splits, doesn't he? And he's like, does he fall back and break his violin? This is satire, I think, because I always see in America there's these pledge things, on TV. People can phone in. You always saw it in The Simpsons, don't you? These kind of
Mm.
things, but it never did this over here. I don't think.
Well, I suppose it's a little bit like the Well, I think this is an American version of a telethon, basically, isn't it? Where
Yes.
I think we have telethons in in this country, but you don't get these like rows of people answering the phones and so on. It's like it always makes me think of Friends, that episode where Joey's on the on taking calls and saying we don't do that, don't do it that way. Got his little suit and tie on. This is proper subversive stuff, actually, isn't it? When you think about it, this is real.
In the background, lady's like doing her hair. So there's 37 million basically Detroit is in debt, looks like.
Yeah, which is rather less than the figure that I think they reported when they did finally file for bankruptcy, which is it's kind of weird to think about that this movie predicted as a joke the idea of an actual city going bust. And it only a few years later it actually happened and it was the same actual city.
There was a great documentary about Detroit and the police out there that they just didn't have hardly any police officers to deal with the amount of crime.
Yeah.
And it was really bad. And also we've seen with the water being tampered with or not being looked after properly by these companies. Have they actually erected that RoboCop statue in Detroit yet?
Oh, I don't know.
For years they were kind of showing this thing that was well, it had been built, and I don't know if it actually has been put up.
I don't know how they.
And now their OCP are in trouble as well because of all the problems, And this is their last saving grace, I suppose. RoboCop 2, and what she's created. It's gonna be. It's like straight away. It's like shown to the public, and it's they've got a maniac in there. But it's like he's Kane's RoboCop. It's like his first introduction is so creepy. He steps out of the vehicle, and the feet go, and he opens up the shutter, and you can see him, and it drops down. Oh, it's such a great introduction.
What do you make of the design of that? Because it is called RoboCop 2, isn't it? The actual
Yes.
RoboCop.
Well, I think it's a brilliant design. And I think I may have mentioned in the first commentary that the design of Ed 209 was so frustrating because all these kind of garage kits of Ed 209 in China and Japan were produced and sold kind of unlicensed, really. And he didn't make any money off that. And he's like, right, for RoboCop 2, I'm going to make the most complicated thing that no one's ever going to make a miniature or model kit out of this. And they never did for years. It was only till recently by the way, the last decade they made a little tiny Kane, and now they're making a slightly bigger one. But we've not seen like the size of, I've got a giant Ed 209, but you can't get well. For what I've seen, you can't. I have not seen a giant Kane RoboCop. But yeah, that's why he sort of made it really complicated. But it's such a really cool design. It's really who would actually design this to protect people? It looks so threatening.
Yeah, yeah.
From the get go. It looks more threatening than Ed 209. you know? um,
I love that they've actually designed a means of of feeding it the drug it's addicted to as well. It's built into the very concept of the thing that it's going to be a drug addict. It's going to be a junkie RoboCop.
Well, as we were saying earlier on about the analog effects, I mean, this does make use of CGI, doesn't it? It's for the face of Kane
Yeah, I
when it
suppose
comes out
so.
on
Yeah.
the LED screen, which is even for the time, it's very difficult to do with technology to sort of a very tiny little LCD thing. I suppose very clever. But this is all again we're seeing the characters set around an abandoned factory, which is all very in keeping with RoboCop 1.
He's too broad, I think, this guy. I get the idea, but he's always on it. It's every expression, every moment. He's a joke, and
Mm. He's a man of the people.
he's a man of the people.
Well, it's like he's basically been elected because he's got a big mouth. You know what I mean?
Mm,
But I think he's kind of morally, right. He's on the right side of things. But he's just like everything he does is just like to the top. I think maybe a bit of, a bit of the balance of his performance made a sort of more somewhat sympathetic kind of mayor.
Just less, a few scenes of him not being a joke. I'd have
Well, the bit
appreciated.
when he sees Kane now and he goes, he's a killer. I mean, that's just a great little moment because it's great for trailer fodder stuff.
Yeah,
He delivers it well, but it's just Frank Miller's writing, isn't it? But it's too comic booky, maybe. But this is what is maybe the first attempt. Do you think, like, for a live action feature length movie, to have a comic book writer write it?
that's a really interesting point. Yeah, when did that start happening? Who was the first comic book writer to?
Well, I know. I think Bill Finger, who did Batman, co-created Batman with Bob Kane. He had, I think, written one or two scripts for the Adam West show, but I'm sure some of the comic writers had maybe contributed to some episodes of TV shows. I know some had contributed to the Superboy TV show in 88, 89, around this time. So other producers were seeing that it makes sense to hire the comic book writers to do these things. Also, when Kevin Smith would write Superman Lives, that never got made, but he had said to Warner Brothers, why don't you just get the comic writers? I know what they're doing. Because, they write comics, they're not movie guys.
Yeah,
But maybe this was kind of their excuse to say, well, we won't get comic writers anymore because Frank Miller wrote this and it's not as good as we thought it would be. But look at this, that introduction. It's just the feet. It's just the little touches.
there are some. The touch I love is the claws of the thing that comes out to receive the nuke, the drug, especially the later one that he's given on the stage, and it's claws.
Like, gimme, 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 gimme.
It's such a beautiful little touch. Yeah, I suppose with regard to the comic book writers, it's easy to forget that there had been hardly any, relatively speaking, comic book adaptations of movies at this point, mainstream movies anyway, and certainly like superhero movies that kind of lead the whole comic book adaptation industry. There were, I mean, how many American mainstream superhero movies were there in prior to, well, even immediately after the Batman, Tim Burton Batman in '89? It still took a few years for them to catch on.
Well, yeah, you had things like the Rocketeer, the Shadow, the Phantom, and the Mask, but they weren't written by comic writers, as far as I'm aware.
And even if you include Superman and Supergirl, it's really just a
Well, that's the
handful.
'80s, though,
It's
isn't it? Yeah,
probably
'cause
fewer than are made now every year in the States anyway.
yes. So when this came out, also in production, Batman came out, and the Punisher would come out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Superman had fizzled out in '87. But this was, the '90s were kind of they didn't know really what they were doing. They're sort of like, look at that shot there, it's incredible. But it was kind of,
It was Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and the X-Men movies. That was, for me, that's when it sort of really seems to, but prior to that, it was only really the isolated franchises of Christopher Reeve's Superman and Batman. And yeah, the odd occasional crossover, like the Rocketeer. It's kind of a superhero movie, but it's a comic book movie, yeah. But
they were piecemeal, weren't they? Because it was always quite exciting when something would come out, but it was always like you never knew when these things were coming out. Just randomly,
Yeah.
oh, one's coming out now. It's like well ahead what's going on, because they'd have the Disney or Marvel have this big marketing plan spreadsheet. You'd see this is coming next in 5 years' time. We're doing this movie. It's mad. It's corporate bullshit.
Effectively, the aspect of the industry that now pays for everything wasn't even really identified and conceived and executed until the turn of the millennium sort of time.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was just this huge untapped resource that no one really knew what to do with. In the US, anyway, in countries like Turkey and the Philippines, there's a rich history of superhero movies.
They saw the potential, man. I love this bit there when the mayor is just about to get shot. He's like, ah! And he sort of falls into the sewers and all this shit and flies out into the sea. Hide behind something, you fool. It. He must be able to see through stuff. Must have his heat vision on or something.
I always think that should spell something out.
What would it spell though, Rob? You got to think that's the joke. What would it be?
Yeah, it's something obscene.
I love drugs. It's like,
Where's my fucking nuke?
yeah, where's it? See, you can see his OS. So this is like, it's like a Mac, or I suppose a Linux. I suppose maybe it's supposed to be kind of like.
Isn't that the early Mac font actually?
It's it kind of. It looks like he's powered by Mac OS, isn't it? So you can see, like, obviously for Phil Tippett's team, they design like a typical model for the stop motion. Then they design, I think, like a 1/8 scale for the close-ups, and there's a giant, like, real life piece for Peter Weller to essentially interact with. You know, when he pulls the brain out and stuff like that. And it's only like I think it's like top half bit. And obviously there's a. Remember Phil Tippett said like he caught conjunctivitis on this. Then he got a
Yes.
cold
Yeah.
afterwards. Then he broke a rib using that sort of weird device where RoboCop literally hangs onto Ed, not Ed, hangs onto Kane. He's thrown around, and he broke a rib doing that. Didn't have much luck on this movie. It's
No.
constant
And he
hiccups.
hated it as well, didn't he? By the end of it, the constant changes and
No, yeah.
yeah,
And one of the guys, like the stress when when you're Kane's, Anne Lewis drives that truck into Kane. He's like, rah, and he gets smashed against the wall, and then they're doing a stop motion where he kind of lifts it over to escape,
yes, yeah.
and then the model just like moved like a little fraction, but that'll be like 10 feet on film. He's blown up, so they've gone like 50 frames in, had to do it all over again. So I think the quality of stop motion in this is such a high quality, but also it's executed so well because of that dedication to each
Yeah.
shot, each frame of animation. That's why CG, even though they sort of say it looks more realistic, but I think the stop motion gives it that kind of weird quirkiness and freakiness that it kind of looks more real in execution.
I think there's an argument to be made that stop motion makes a lot more sense for robots than it does people, essentially, obviously. But in fact, there's a shot in that sequence that I've never known how. Oh, so brutal. That is so brutal. I've never known how it's done, and I rewatching this movie the other night. I flipped back a couple of times trying to figure it out. It's when RoboCop jumps onto RoboCop 2, and the start of the shot, it's clearly a stuntman jumping. But the end of the shot, as far as I can figure out, it can only be stop motion. But it's one shot. So at some point, it switches from live action to stop motion in a way that I just can't conceive of. I don't know how they've done it. Unless maybe they had
Because they've
RoboCop
shot
jumping.
that plate already. They've shot that plate already.
Yeah,
The background plate. So the background plate's him jumping. So they know when he's going to go past a frame. So they'll put the miniature in the right position for him to go jump on. So
and they'll have a clean. So is the background plate full size, full scale?
the VistaVision plate. Yeah.
So that's like at human size, and then the smaller So is the stop motion Kane comped into the full size backplate, or is the real life RoboCop comped into a miniature backplate?
No. So it'll do. The background plate would be the stuntman jumping off onto a crash mat.
Yeah,
Right? So
and then
he
they'll have
drops in the middle of the
clean
frame.
version of that as well without.
Yes,
Yeah,
you do too. Yeah, and then you just literally then animate Kane in front of that background plate. Will be within one shot. So it's kind of rear projected, isn't it? So that's how Ray Harryhausen would do it.
yeah. Oh, it's ever so effective though.
Oh man, yeah.
I love how they used. I think we talked about this briefly in the first one, but the way they use motor sound effects for robots is something that's never made any sense whatsoever. Like just then, it like all the motors involved in him walking. You can't hear any of them doing anything, but then suddenly he'll move his head and you'll hear a noise. And it's just,
Oh yeah. This brings it
It's
all to life,
completely
though.
nonsensical, but it works. Yeah, it does bring it to life. It helps you buy into it. But why should you hear that one particular motor that one particular time and none of the others?
It sounds like it needs greasing up a bit, or something.
I don't buy this at all. This whole so now RoboCop suddenly this kid isn't a threat. He doesn't matter. He's a victim all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like, and this kid like helped pull him apart, earlier on. But he's showing the he's showing the moral high ground that he's a better person, RoboCop. He's not going to just suddenly just break his neck.
What's he doing now, this kid? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he was interviewed for RoboDoc when it was originally planned to do all three at once, but that's coming later on. I think RoboDoc 2, whatever. Um, you know what? What's the kid called in this?
Oh God, I can't remember now. Yeah, good question.
That's a good question. I want to come back to that.
Did you happen to listen to the commentary from the guys who made RoboDoc?
No, no, not a chance. I did a while back. A while back, I did. Yeah, not a
Yeah,
chance recently.
I hadn't realized how long that was in production for. RoboDoc, I mean.
Yeah, yeah. That's just it's finances. You know, documentaries aren't cheap. You know, you can make them cheap, but they're not
Yeah,
looking very good.
we know how they go. Hob,
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 that's
that's
right.
his name. Hob.
Gabriel Damon.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So he's in a yeah. He's not. I think he was.
Yeah, he's had big gaps in his career. You know,
So he's mainly
um,
played kids.
I think he may just spent more time maybe with his education maybe at the time. It's kind of a weird thing when you see child actors, and they sort of have big gaps because they've gone to school. you
Yeah.
know, or some that if they've got really pushy parents and they keep them acting, they have school between shooting stuff, don't they? And there's great photos of like the Goonies, like the kids all being taught by a teacher between shooting. And it's interesting with OCP with the big flag at the back. It's very Nazi-like,
I
isn't it?
know. Yeah.
Yes, bit on the nose with their, you know, sort of fascist kind of imagery. You know.
So, oh yeah. So watch out. There's a scene coming up. If you remember, I mentioned in the RoboCop commentary the rather bizarre bit of trivia that she's a real newscaster, Lisa Gibbons, and she was married for reasons that I don't think anyone can ever explain or identify. She was married to a very famous soap opera actor in the UK who was big in the 80s.
Yes.
And he's actually in this scene. Look, there he is in the grey suit. Grey suit. There he is. That's
Oh
Brian
my god!
Tilsley from Coronation Street.
What there on the right?
Yeah,
Oh my god!
with a notepad now, just writing in his notepad.
Look at that mullety hair he's got.
Married to, I mean, he would have been at this time, he would have been in my living room on a daily basis because my parents watched Coronation Street.
And Garen and his wife got him the job on this.
Yeah. So presumably the hope was that he was going to break into Hollywood and so on. Now he runs a bunch of strip clubs in the UK.
What?
Yeah.
And he's still married to her, is he?
No, no, he's now married to like a 20-year-old stripper. He's obviously like well into his 60s by this point. And if you look him up on it, he's always got these like proper dodgy underworld sharp guy suits on, and God knows what kind of circles he moves in nowadays, being part of the London underground.
My god. I weirdly love the production design of this conference room. It's so simple, but sort of weirdly kind
Mm.
of keeping in point with RoboCop, and it feels like even like something you'd see in Total Recall. That sort of, I don't know, brutalist kind of architecture. I don't know why, but weirdly in my mind, it feels like the inside of a Tandy's electronics store in the UK when they were around. Don't know why. It's just the use of grey.
That's Radio Shack in the US. That would have been.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's also vaguely Nazi-like to my mind.
Mm.
There's something kind of utilitarian almost, but I don't know. And yeah, obviously the flags help, but just the general architecture somehow.
I love it when he sees
That is funny.
RoboCop 2. He just like instant like
I love that bit where he sits down and then he's like trying to prove that he's not to be messed with and
yeah, yeah.
can't decide what
Everyone's
he's
like,
doing
sit
at all.
down. Everyone's like, you know. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? Because he's in charge, but no one's elected him to be in charge.
Mm.
OCP is that sort of, again, big companies taking over and having power, too much power.
The satire here it really goes into another gear in this last act. There's some really good lines coming up. What he says when Kane's gone mental and there's dead bodies everywhere and it's complete war on the streets, and Dana Hurley, he just says, "This could look bad for OCP." Oh, he was born for this role. I just love this character. Is this a Godzilla reference, do you think?
Yeah, potentially, but it's very very Japanese with its kind of imagery, I think.
Yeah.
Because what John Davidson said, like, I think in the behind the scenes stuff, like talking about the film's release date, say, it's out in the summer of next year, which is 1990, but it said we'll be getting prints ready very quickly for the Japanese market, which is very important.
They love their robots and their robot movies.
Yeah. Even RoboCop 3, they loved, Maybe because of Japanese connection.
Yeah, and also a lot of the tonal problems in movies like that are going to get lost in translation for the benefit of the movie.
I love that. He's like, ooh. He's like, no.
You want that that Warner Brothers, is it, or Hanna-Barbera sound effect? Whoop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's giving him pure concentrated Tizer. It's like...
You've got to admire
his hands.
all the
So
shit
good.
that this movie gets. You've got to admire a movie that can get us to this point here, where we're in a Nazi hall with a drug-addicted robot being presented as the savior of everything, and it's just complete madness, really.
I mean, I think most of the fans who love RoboCop, the franchise, I think by this point they all love this part of the movie because you're just seeing two robots bashing out, and it's and it's the same sort of mentality, I suppose, in fandom what you see with Godzilla versus whatever, people just tune in for that, but that's one whole movie of just stupid punching where this is kind of isolated moments. That's a great line. You're obsolete, And I saw it. So, the music kicks in. He's like, right, turn that off. You notice RoboCop's coming with the state-of-the-art bang bang, isn't he? I think it is. Was that something else?
I've got a feeling that it's not the same gun but it looks very similar. I meant to look into this actually.
They said they had like so many guns on this movie, so many different types of guns.
They're basically dressed like Gestapo agents, the other police there.
Of this bit. Ping! He goes flying back. For yourself. I mean, what a great line, He's not pissed off now. Right, okay, what am I going to do? I don't know. Sort of runs off.
What would Mr. Burns do?
Mr. Burns. Smithers.
That's the second time RoboCop's bullseyed the barrel to...
Yeah. Oh, his gun's no use, really. I love his... And he extends. Oh, look at that. It's cool. But it's proper creepy, though, isn't it? The Kane robot, when he shoots the lift cable and he goes flying up and you can hear Kane and he's like running up the wall with his arms spinning.
Yes, yeah.
That was creepy as hell as a kid.
Yeah, things rushing at you. Just it's a really underrated horror trope, that.
Yeah, for sure. They the shadows. Oh, the composer's doing a good job here with the sort of the creepy music and some good stuff in this score.
You're right, yeah. And this last act in particular, everything just comes alive in this last act,
It
doesn't it?
really does. Because they were supposed to be fighting on top of a skyscraper, weren't they? Like
King
and it
Kong, yeah.
Yeah, it would be too costly, so it just takes place in the streets. And RoboCop's like, "What's that?" You can hear him coming. God, yeah.
He's just reminded me. He's always Kane RoboCop 2 has always reminded me of a movie robot that I've not been able to quite pin down. But I think it's the one, the Harvey Keitel one from what's it called, Saturn 3.
Oh, Saturn 3. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
There's something about the way that they're both cyborgs, and there's something about the way that the flesh and metal meet that's just really disturbing and I don't know, kind of existentially troubling.
Yeah, Saturn 3 was supposed to be directed by production designer John Barry, but he died like quite a young age, and that's supposed to be sort of jumping from production designer to a director, and it got sat in limbo for a little bit.
It's an interesting movie.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's not a good blue screen shot, that isn't. No. But it's interesting here because when we saw in RoboCop 1, we saw a couple of little shots of stop motion RoboCop. You know, when he pushes Ed's 209's kind of gun arm in the other one, it sort of breaks it off. And but this one you sort of see Kane pick up RoboCop and go bang, bang, bang. You know. So there's a couple of little shots of stop motion Robo.
There's quite a few, yeah. And it's there's a lot more effects shots in general. A lot more effects shots in general. I think probably explains why the budget is nearly 3 times as much as.
Yeah, it's like 35 million, something like that. It didn't make a huge amount at the box office, which was a shame. Maybe it's down to reviews had sort of maybe done a bit of damage, or maybe word of mouth. I don't know, but I think there's a lot more promotional stuff for RoboCop 2 than the first one. Orion didn't make the same mistake they did with the Terminator, where just like, a couple of TV spots, James Cameron going livid, going promote the movie. Yeah, this was fully promoted.
I was surprised to see how much this did make to be actually, because obviously it's known as a catastrophe. But movies of this era are always hard to pin down because you never know whether they're citing US only figures. It wasn't really until like partway into the 90s that
you saw worldwide.
Yeah, which is the only way it really makes any sense, because obviously a movie can do well in one country and not in another. But this, according to Wikipedia, this grossed, I think, 45 million, whereas RoboCop 1 grossed 50 million.
And RoboCop 1 was seen as this massive hit.
Yeah, which, to be fair,
less,
it cost
yeah.
a third. It cost like 10 million or whatever. So it would have been, and the advertising campaign you just mentioned that they didn't bother with for the first one would have so obviously the first one's going to be a lot more, financially rewarding, even though it didn't gross that much more. But I was really surprised to see that this grossed that much.
I think it did. I think it did a lot better of home video and cable.
Yeah. And the foreign territory money for RoboCop, I think, would probably have been pretty good, actually. So, there are certain movies that didn't travel all that well around that time, but RoboCop, I think, did.
I mean, the Japanese would have loved this bit.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just like shooting everyone to bits. Yeah, it is definitely the best of stop motion. I think that's the best it could ever actually get. Because I know that Phil Tippett was going to do stop motion for Jurassic Park, and you've seen those sort of tests he did to show you. It's still just once you saw the CG work, you see, it's just that's the end of stop motion. You couldn't look so much more realistic, But Phil was still, I think, have some influence on even the newer one, Jurassic World. He'd be used to sort of supervise stuff.
Well, I think. Wasn't there, because he basically learnt to do CG, didn't he? He learnt 3D in order to do Jurassic Park. But I want to say as well that there was some the system he invented was some kind of crossover. It used a lot of stop motion techniques, or it was almost rotoscoped stop motion or something like that.
Yeah, it was used to do the animation. That was it. Yeah. Where's Robo? Can't find him.
I've forgotten what he looks like, so each time I look at a person, I'll just flash up this photo of RoboCop to see if it's
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
The absurdity of the weapons as well.
That's only for the audience, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
to show you. That's what sort
It's
of
like
you
we
have
were
to do,
talking about
don't you?
with Terminator 3 the other day. Like, at what point does it become silly for us to be seeing perspectives like that? Because clearly the robot doesn't need to remind itself, it doesn't need a heads-up display with text and pictures and so on.
No.
It's just going to be fed digitally into its brain.
There was a great shot there when this lady sort of walked in camera, got shot. The guy running went to pick her up, then he got shot in the back. Oh, there's so many good deaths in this. That's the funny sort of side of the people getting, shot on film, isn't it? It's just kind of a bit...
This is a classic, proper Gestapo. This is the beauty of it, isn't it? It's the excess. We talk every now and again about what it is we enjoy, ironically, in good bad movies, and excess is the first thing. That's the entry level gateway thing. They do a really good job of making this funny and exciting at the same time. Once again, the Detroit Police Department could basically just be RoboCop and Lewis. No one else has done anything useful, I don't think. Case of 2 movies.
They're all acting like the A-Team, just shooting stuff and no one's dying. When you got one thing to shoot, though, that's the problem, isn't it? And it's just bouncing off it. I love how the sort of, the psychiatrist she runs over and she's like somewhat happy he survived.
Yeah.
You know.
She's a great character.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the first time we've seen Lewis in about 3/4 of an hour as well, thinking about it?
But Nancy Allen said when she watched the movie, she did like it, but she didn't like watching herself, doing this film. I think it's sort of the bad experience of making it, Because it's interesting stuff about this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to go back and remember one's initial thoughts of it, and if did it meet one's expectations. And at the end of the day, you don't know really what to expect with a RoboCop sequel. I mean, after watching the first one, you said, well, where's it going to go next? Maybe it didn't go where people really wanted, but I think there's a lot of brilliant stuff in this. I think it's just down to sort of the visual effects, really. It's just a great looking movie.
Yeah, I think if you take out, this is the bit I love with the animation of these claws here. It's pure filter. It's just like the little moments you get with Ed 209 with his foot going nuts when he's been blown up outside OCP headquarters at the end of the first movie. Just these little touches that Phil Tippett adds.
Is he at this point now? He's taken his drugs. He's all chilled. He's like, that's better, But is he going to do any more attacking? Maybe he's just attacking because he needed the drugs.
Yeah, this is that shot here that I.
Yeah, that's it cuts to stop motion. Yeah, it's interesting when they shoot a lot of the close-ups with the miniatures, even the big miniature. They had a lot of lens glow to it, it's very soft filtered.
I mean, yeah,
very shiny.
Going back to what you said about what you expect from a RoboCop sequel, and I suppose it's kind of, you'd logically think, well, either you remake the first one or you do something completely different, and they were basically the 2 options that Orion were juggling with, and in the end, they kind of did something in between, didn't they? Because the plot is, it's another old Detroit gang boss, it's another OCP being manipulative, and it's all the same sort of stuff, but then the tone is just so different and so wild and so out there, and this last act is just so unhinged that it is genuinely different and worthwhile. And this is a great example that RoboCop smashing his fist at his. I mean, that's almost pure comedy.
Yeah. Oh, I guess the sound effect, and he just goes. I love the little sound effects there. Such a cool design. But yeah, also, we mentioned action movies where they just abruptly end.
Yeah.
this does exactly the same thing. There's no
Yeah.
proper wrap up to it, and he goes, well, Robocop just puts a screw in his head. We're only human, and just goes Robocop
Like
2.
the
You
end of
know,
a TV episode, right? And next week we'll be doing this.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
is one of my favorite bits coming out. It's only a tiny moment, but the way Dana Hurley just steps over the dead body without even noticing. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, he's very Mr. Burns in this. You think, you know?
And that guy, I've never really noticed this other guy in this scene here. The guy who looks like he should be on Trump's advisory committee, but he's brilliant at oozing sleaze and nastiness
Oh
as well.
yeah, yeah. Because he was earlier on when he's just like, you pull this shit, you know, going to you see his wife's house, you know, RoboCop. Oh, look at it, the bullshit she's putting on now. He turns around to the other guy. He's just like, that thing we're talking about. Get right on it. It's like, 'cause you can see through her bullshit, you know. Johnson.
Yeah, she's dead before she gets home.
And she thinks she's got away with it. Look at that. Oh.
I think maybe if he was just a bit older, I'd be happier with him. But somehow he just doesn't. He just doesn't seem like he should be the mayor of a major city. This is
There you go.
this
For the bit you like. I think you should have stepped on her.
just doesn't give a toss. Window up.
Yeah. See, as a kid, I was always like, this ending's weird. It didn't really. It's so bizarre. And it's comical, though, you know, just a little. It finishes.
Also, you know, it's like 9 months. The time and energy and effort that went into every little detail. I wouldn't be surprised if they just didn't think about, okay, all right, that's how we end.
Yeah.
Like you've got to then think, oh, hang on, let's have a little scene to wrap things up. They don't have time to think about that when there's 9 months to do everything.
No. Maybe there was something they shot, but, you know, because the first one had this kind of just Lewis in hospital and stuff. Just like, no, just end with Murphy. You know, it's just a wonderful ending. Well, that just ends with a little bit kind of like abrupt ending, but kind of ends with a little joke, you know. But yeah, as a kid, I was a bit like, oh, is that how you end it? Never mind. But yeah, I think, you know, watching it again, I watched this movie, and I've lost count. So it's, I still think it's a good film, you know, and in terms of it getting better over time, I think it's just down to, it's so far now, since the original release of this, you can just judge it on its own merits, and its own merits are, like, it gives you, it's really good action, there's some funny characters in it, it's, you know, as we say, tonally uneven, and a bit mean-spirited, and the music, you know, it doesn't bring over the same things, but I think the score by itself, and there's moments in it which are really good, and the performances are brilliant. Again, you know, Peter Weller just breezing through it because he knows what he's doing, and he just smashes it. It's unfortunate Tom Noonan's character doesn't really get to do much.
Yeah,
you know, his character should have been expanded and developed, and the mayor, as you say, is kind of over the top and a bit too over the top, and the kid is just morally bankrupt, but you know. It's reflecting as an adult. You know, you've got children. You could say it's not particularly wise to have these type of characters in it because kids will watch it. You know, because it's RoboCop. You know, as we said with the first one, so many kids got to see RoboCop at a young age, but they shouldn't have seen it. And it's because he looks fucking cool and the name's cool. So it's hard to, you know, avoid these, you know, kids being influenced in some way. But kids, as we always say, the news and stuff with the video nasties. Oh, kids are going to be, you know, inspired or to do things horrible. I've never known that at all, even with video games, you know.
I think that's a drastically over-egged theory. I think that kids are going to copy things, but it's also it's not so much a concern about what a child might make or be influenced to do by watching this. It's more just the extraordinary barefaced cynicism of filmmakers who are prepared to go, right, what can we put in this movie for kids? How about a drug dealing, psychotic murderer kid for them to identify with? It's more just like, as a decision, it's really questionable rather than innately problematic, I suppose.
I think most kids will probably be, somewhat relatable to the kids in the arcade. That's it. They're just there playing games. The same
Yeah.
connection I would make as a child. But you
Yeah.
know,
And you don't, and also kids don't necessarily need children to relate to as well. Kids relate to, when I was a kid, my favorite character was probably Rambo or Han Solo. And, I wasn't interested in kids because you don't aspire to be a child when you're a child, do you? You aspire to be the cool grown up with a massive fucking Bowie knife.
and that's that's the problem with the writers or directors think having a child in the movies will somewhat appeal to them. The kids, they don't. What appeals to kids in this is RoboCop.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so having a kid, they don't want to be a kid in that. They want to pretend to be the adult. They want to pretend to see the hero on screen and then react and play that out in their garden or in their bedroom, whatever. As you do with playtime.
Yeah.
I did that a lot when I was a kid. So acting out bits from movies, and everyone's guilty of that. But yeah, so Rob, do you think it over these years? Do you think it's kind of stands up as a worthy sequel?
I think it's definitely found a place now, which I can understand why it didn't necessarily at the time, because apart from anything else, we're just much more used to these wild tone shifts, I think, these days than we used to be back then. And the longer, we now see this as part of the franchise. It's not the new RoboCop movie. So it has less to, I don't know, it's easier to accept something on its own terms in those circumstances rather than see it through the prism of the first film. And I think overall, it's just a couple of wrong decisions that were made probably as a result of the limited time frame. Certainly that kid just isn't as interesting as Tom Noonan is, so why not have more Tom Noonan and less of him? I miss Nancy Allen, not being in it more, but it's kind of, it's not necessarily obvious what you'd have done with her differently.
Well, maybe she should have been investigating what that psychiatrist was up to.
Yeah,
Doing her own investigating into what this RoboCop 2 was going to be, and people don't believe her, or she's been, maybe locked up for a.
yeah. Or like I said earlier, have a kind of team up with the woman who's kind of in charge of looking after him. Yeah, and to investigate what the evil woman's up to. Yeah,
I think what it boils down to is the film entertaining, and for me, it is still very entertaining,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's a pass. It still makes it a good film.
There are scenes and there are lines of dialogue as well. There are so many lines of dialogue in that movie that we didn't even mention as they went by that are just hilarious, that are just brilliant.
Well, everyone, that is the end of the commentary. I hope you all enjoyed it. And keeping with continuing on with the series of commentaries on other films, we are going to be covering Alien 3 next. So we're going to be doing the extended cut of Alien 3. Have you seen that one?
I probably haven't. I don't always notice which one it is I'm watching, but
You know the difference, right?
yeah, I do. Do you know what? It's been a couple of years since I went deep with Alien, but yeah, I vaguely remember.
So theatrical cut of Alien 3, the alien comes out of a dog, and in the special edition cut, it comes out of an ox. That's the difference in terms of its birth, but there's other bits obviously
Yeah.
changed, put back in. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm looking
because-
forward to that one actually, because that's a movie I've not seen for a really long time.
Oh wow! Oh good. Okay, you have to make sure you do your research on that, 'cause it's a fascinating production. Alien 3 is really fascinating.
Yeah, too right.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that's the end of the commentary. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye for now.